I still remember the exact moment she told me. It was raining, the kind of heavy, soul-crushing rain that makes you feel like the whole world is grieving with you. We were in the kitchen of the apartment we'd shared for 5 years, a place filled with laughter, morning coffee rituals, and late-night movie marathons, a place that used to feel like home. But that day, everything changed. Her voice was calm, too calm, like she had practiced this a dozen times in her head. "Daniel," she said, not even looking me in the eye, "I think we've grown apart." I stared at her, trying to understand what was happening. This wasn't out of the blue. Not exactly. We'd had our fights, our distant weeks, but I thought we were just going through a rough patch, something all couples face. But what she said next told me everything. There's someone else. The air left my lungs like I'd been sucker punched. I didn't even ask who. I didn't want to know. But she told me anyway. His name was Mason, a hedge fund manager. She met him at a charity gala she'd gone to with her company. "We just clicked," she said. "He's confident, ambitious. He knows what he wants." I was none of those things, apparently. She packed her bags that night. Didn't cry. Didn't beg me to understand. Just left. I didn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I kept replaying our last few months together. The secret smiles on her phone. The late nights she brushed off with just work. The emotional distance I felt but couldn't explain. I thought she was going through something. I never imagined she was going to someone. The next few weeks were hell. I stopped answering texts, turned off social media, even took unpaid leave from work. What was the point of pretending everything was fine when I was falling apart? But then something shifted. One night, I saw a photo of them together, smiling, arms wrapped around each other in front of some private jet. And something in me snapped. I wasn't going to sit back and be the sad ex she left behind. No, if she wanted a new life, if she thought she'd upgraded, then I was going to watch it unravel from the inside. And so the plan began. Getting a job at Preston Tech wasn't easy. It was a fortress of prestige and connections, and I didn't exactly have the Ivy League background or the glowing recommendations they looked for. But what I did have was purpose, the kind of laser focus that makes men dangerous. I spent weeks rebuilding my resume, crafting every word to fit exactly what they wanted. I studied their products, read every employee review, followed their executives on LinkedIn, and figure out where they recruited from. Then I created a new identity, not fake, but carefully sculpted. I used my middle name, changed a few details, and applied for a mid-level role in their PR department under that name. I got an interview, then a call back, then the offer. Walking into their corporate headquarters for the first time, I felt the walls close in. It wasn't just a job. It was their world. Her world. The one she abandoned me for. The office was a glass palace filled with sterile smiles and ambition sharp enough to cut. I kept my head down and worked. Hard. I built trust. I made friends. I found the cracks in their polished walls. 3 weeks in, I learned something valuable. Preston didn't trust people. Not really. His inner circle was tight. But that tightness created gaps, and gaps meant leverage. It took time, but I found my way into that circle. It started with one of Preston's assistants, a guy named Michael, mid-30s, insecure, always trying too hard. I helped him with a project. He was fumbling, stayed late, covered for him when he was hungover. Before long, he started pulling me into meetings. From there, I met Preston. In person, he was everything I expected, confident, wealthy, oozing arrogance. He shook my hand like I was a valet, never looked me in the eye, just another disposable cog to him. But I looked at him like prey. The more I observed, the more cracks I found. Preston was smart but reckless. He flirted with interns, left confidential documents lying around, delegated major decisions to people who were underqualified just because they sucked up to him. He was the king of a paper kingdom. And then came the moment I've been waiting for. I saw her. Caroline. She walked into the office during one of Preston's executive meetings, laughing at something he said, her hand brushing his arm like it belonged there. My stomach twisted, but I didn't flinch. She didn't recognize me. The new name, the new beard, the new posture. I was leaner now, Harder. I smiled at her politely like I'd never seen her before. She walked past me like I was nothing. Perfect. Over the next few weeks, I watched them, studied them. Caroline had taken a role of Preston's consultant, though she did little more than sip espresso in meetings and nod like she understood business strategy. But she had influence, real influence. She whispered in his ear, gave him advice, helped him build his image. She was his weakness. I started building alliances in the office, people who hated Preston quietly but smiled in public. I became the guy who listened, the guy who helped. I never gossiped, never pushed, but I collected everything. Then I made my move. It started with a minor PR slip-up, a tweet from Preston's account that could be interpreted as insensitive during a major political event. I didn't post it. I just made sure it stayed up for an extra 2 hours while I investigated. The backlash exploded. Preston blamed one of the interns. HR investigated. 2 people were fired. Not me. I helped clean it up. Preston thanked me publicly. His gratitude bought me access. And with access came secrets. Emails, private folders, passwords, personal notes. And then the jackpot. A hidden folder in Preston's work cloud, casually labeled drafts. Inside, screenshots, bank transfers, videos, all tied to an offshore account. Money laundering. I sat staring at the screen for hours that night. Preston wasn't just a cocky tech bro. He was a criminal. And Caroline was in on it. There were messages from her, talking about discreet transfers and risk tolerance, and minimizing tax exposure. She wasn't just his plaything. She was his partner in crime. My plan had been revenge. Ruin their relationship. Humiliate her. Tear down the fantasy she'd built, and leave her hollow. But now I had something bigger. I could destroy both their worlds. Not just their relationship. Everything. Still, I didn't rush. Revenge is a sprint. It's a chess game. And I was already 5 moves ahead. Every fortress has its siege tower, and every predator a blind spot. For Preston, it was his belief in his own invincibility. He thought that because he had a yacht docked on the coast, a few board members in his contact list, and money flowing quietly to Singapore, he was untouchable. For Carolina, it was her faith in beauty as control. That men would fall in love, women would grow jealous, and she could always find her way out. No matter how much smoke was in the air, I was the spark, the one that would start the fire. First, I laid the groundwork. My goal wasn't just to expose them, but to do it in a way that made them turn on each other. Slowly, tastefully. I started with Carolina. One day in the office, I slipped a document into her folder, unnoticed. It was the one she had to take into an investor meeting. The document contained information about one of Preston's projects, only twisted, manipulated to make it look compromising. The meeting tanked. Preston was furious. Carolina swore she had no idea. He didn't believe her. I heard him yelling at her in the hallway, followed by a slammed door. She ran out, lips trembling, eyes darting like a wounded cat. Step 1, distrust. Step 2, doubt. I created a fake account. A woman's profile. Sophisticated. Italian scenery. Wine glasses. Cryptic quotes about men who forget that women know how to get revenge. Then I had the account start liking Preston's posts, leaving comments on his stories. And finally, I made it accidentally DM a photo. Nothing explicit, just enough to ignite suspicion. 2 days later, Carolina showed up to the office and read, threw her phone at him, walked out without a word. Step 3, isolation. While they stewed in their own distrust, I escalated. Remember those folders with banking records? I began copying them, carefully, methodically, using encrypted flash drives and temporary servers. I wasn't in a rush. It had to be flawless. I built a dossier on Preston. Offshore accounts, shady transactions, corporate fraud, illegal software exports to sanctioned countries, on the SEC watch list, tax evasion, ties to people you'd never see at a charity gala. Carolina was woven into it all, sometimes directly, sometimes as a proxy. They weren't just a couple. They were a criminal operation dressed in gloss and Instagram filters. But I didn't plan to just hand them over to the authorities. That would be too easy. I called Preston from my office phone during his lunch break. "Is it you leaking the intel?" he asked, voice like ice. "No," I said calmly. "But if it were, you'd already be in handcuffs." "What do you want?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Justice." "Who are you?" "Someone who once believed in it." I hung up and let him think, let him suspect, let him get angry, and eventually let him make mistakes. The next day, a scandal broke in the office. Someone, had sent an anonymous file to the company's shared communication channel. Not everything, of course, just a slice, a little piece, proof of a bribe to one of the auditors. The company froze. Investors started asking questions. The board called an emergency meeting. For the first time in his life, Preston looked unsure, and Carolina lost. Her face as she looked at him during that meeting said more than words ever could. "You failed me." That evening, when they left the building, I watched them from the corner of the parking lot. They walked in silence, not touching. Carolina smoked. Preston was on the phone, jaw clenched. I knew only one move left. Destruction was close. And this time, they were both going down together. But I hadn't pushed the final button. Not yet, because my favorite part was still ahead, making them destroy each other with their own hands. Every time I walked past their office door now, the silence inside was louder than any shouting match. Preston barely looked at Carolina. She, in turn, had begun to carry her phone around with a paranoia that could choke the air in the room. They were unraveling, not because I forced them to, but because I simply showed them the cracks they were too proud to admit existed. My next move wasn't dramatic. It was a whisper in the dark. Using a burner email and a forged digital identity, I contacted Preston's top investor, Mr. Mallory, a cold-blooded finance shark who only cared about two things: numbers and reputation. I sent him one thing, a screenshot of a confidential export license violation connected to Preston's company, with Carolina's signature on it. Then I waited. Within days, Mallory flew in unannounced. Preston was blindsided. They had a meeting behind closed doors, but the tension leaked out like poison gas. I could see it on his face afterward. Panic, rage, but most importantly, fear. That night, I sent Carolina a message from another fake account. It read, "Your little golden god is sinking. Want to know what he's hiding? Start with the accounts in Belize." Just that. No attachments. No follow-up. But she took the bait. The next week, I noticed her arriving at the office earlier than usual, accessing private folders she never used before, digging, and then printing. A lot. She confronted him in the office parking lot at 9:47 p.m. I was there, watching from the shadows. "You lied to me," she screamed, shoving a folder into his chest. "Lower your damn voice, Carolina. You said we were clean. I just found a wire transfer from one of your shell companies. To your ex-wife. That's none of your business." "None of my—" She laughed, a bitter, broken laugh. "You made me part of this mess. Because you begged to be part of it. You wanted the money, the lifestyle. I wanted you." Silence. That part hurt her the most, because he didn't deny it. He just turned and walked away. She collapsed against the car, shaking. I almost pitied her. Almost. But now it was time for the final strike. I compiled everything I had. All the documents. All the recordings. Even the voicemail Preston left for his silent partner, threatening to burn everything to the ground if the board turned on him. I packaged it into a single USB drive and left it anonymously at the door of the local Financial Crimes Investigation Office. Within 48 hours, subpoenas were issued. Carolina was questioned. Preston went silent. The media caught wind of it fast. A power couple involved in corporate fraud, potential tax evasion, and illegal foreign transfers. Their names were smeared across headlines like blood on snow. But I wasn't done. The last thing I sent Carolina was a message from my real number. No disguise. No alias. It was just a photo. A photo of the very first anniversary she forgot. Me sitting alone at the restaurant. Candlelit table. Empty seat across from me. And a message beneath it. Now you know how it feels to be discarded. She didn't respond, but she saw it. Preston resigned 2 weeks later. The company hemorrhaged investors and was eventually seized by the government for investigation. Carolina vanished from social media. Rumor had it she moved back in with her sister in Vermont, trading designer gowns for oversized sweaters and job interviews she wasn't qualified for. She had nothing, and I had peace. Not joy, not triumph, just peace. Because some victories don't come with parades, they come in silence, when the people who burned you finally burned themselves with a little help. Months passed. The headlines faded, replaced by newer scandals, fresher villains. Preston and Carolina became cautionary tales, used in business schools to illustrate greed, ambition, and betrayal gone wrong. I watched it all from a distance, not with glee, but with a quiet, complicated satisfaction. Because while I didn't set the fire directly, I had handed them the matches. They struck them with their own hands. And they did it because they couldn't help themselves. I moved cities, started fresh, not to escape. I had nothing to run from. I just wanted a place that didn't have her shadow lingering in every coffee shop or her laugh echoing in old stairwells. I took a job that paid less, but gave me peace. I read again, cooked again. I slept through the night without waking up in a sweat, reaching for a body that wasn't there. Revenge is a funny thing. People say it's hollow, that it won't fix the hurt. And maybe they're right. It doesn't rewind time or make her love me again or erase the lies. But it does something else. It puts the power back in her hands. And for a man who was tossed aside like a bad investment, that meant everything. One day I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a note. Handwritten. I recognized the script instantly. Carolina, I know it was you. I knew at the moment I saw that photo. I wish I could hate you, but I hate myself more. You deserve better than the monster I became. I hope someday you find someone who sees you for who you are, not what you can give. I never saw you clearly until it was too late. I'm sorry. See. I read it once. Then I burned it, not out of rage, but because some things don't need to live forever. Years later, I would walk through a quiet Sunday market and see a young couple, laughing, fingers laced together like nothing could touch them. She kissed his cheek. He beamed like he won the lottery. And for a second, I remember how that felt. But I didn't ache, because I had healed, not because of what I did to Carolina or Preston, but because I learned that letting go doesn't always mean forgiving. Sometimes letting go means saying, you don't get to own my story anymore, and then turning the page.